Okay. Whew. Now I'm burning up. I got my beads. I can just take a big, deep breath. Well, I got nothing. Famous words of my son, Aiden. I've got nothing. Anytime we asked him to do schoolwork. How many of you can relate to this? I'd put 2 hands up right now. So some of you don't really know me. I see a lot of new faces. It's been a while since I've been here physically, in person. I've been on Zoom. Aiden would come and try to wave, and I'm like, Aiden, they can't see us. We're in person. He's like, well, why aren't you there? I said, why aren't we there? Oh, I've got too much to do, Mom. Yeah, we got a lot to do. So, anybody else that can relate also have the sense of always saying yes to everything? Saying yes to everything. How many of you do that? Yeah, I've been working on that. At work, I'm a teacher for those of you that don't know. And they decided to lead a How to Raise a Responsible Adult class. So, of course, I signed up for that. This summer, I took an Orton Gillingham reading course that's super intense because they've passed a dyslexia law for schools to be watching students that might have that. And so I had already signed up for that, but had to postpone because I had 2 foot surgeries. So this has been my life. It's been chaotic. It's been stressful. But I still keep saying yes. I keep saying yes. So I did say no to the book study at school to get credit. I don't need credits to renew my license. But I'm still going to help lead that kindergarten and first grade book study because I feel like it's so important for new parents to help our kids, right? And I don't have to insert my opinion. I'm just there to facilitate. So I can give up a couple hours a month for that. So yesterday, when I finally sat down to write my sermon, even though you can see all my glorious notes, because, I left 1 notebook at school, at work, and had to write some more, I still sat there and sat there and sat there because I wasn't taking time. I wasn't taking time to be quiet. I wasn't taking time to listen. And so, as I sat there and sat there and sat there, nothing. I wasn't still enough to hear our God. So I decided I was going to share a pretty big testimony. I haven't been here for a while. I've been MIA, I know. But it doesn't mean that I haven't been actively working with the Lord. As I start, I am going to sprinkle in some of the scriptures that I've written down. All are called, we know that. We are a community. And if Alicia would go ahead and turn on. So in my notes from listening to the sermons, I wasn't physically here, but I kept taking notes. And then one day I started just writing words. I started writing the words. These are some of the words that I got from the sermons. Listen, trust, vulnerability, peace, intimacy among animals, safety, ties that bind, not, Jesus, presence, discomfort, harmony, reconciliation, honor, respectful, be still and know, thrive, unity, anything is possible. These are the words from those that spoke starting our new series. At school, we have been working through something called, now I can't even remember. It's gone. Let me think of it. Our superintendent decided we all needed to do similar words. And there are guiding principles, basically. And they're very similar to our guiding principles of the church, which is really interesting. And in those guiding principles, what he didn't know is most of the teachers were already doing those things. We were teaching students to be respectful. We were teaching inclusivity. We were teaching perseverance and resilience. And so what's happening is principals are coming in and reading to the lower levels. They're having groups at middle and high school. Our assistant principal is also doing little science activities to work on all kids learning these guiding principles at school. And when I spoke the other day to one of my friends at work, one of my colleagues, she's like, "What are you going to do this weekend?" And I said, "Oh, it's busy." And then I told her, she's like, "What? You're giving the sermon?" And she's the one that really got all that anxiety came out, right? That you just saw me have. And I said, "Jenny, I'm not ready." She was, "Oh, you'll do great. You'll do great. You do so much." And I said, "Why do we do so much? Why do we say yes, and why do we do so much?" She's like, "I don't know, Amy, but you're going to do great." And I said, "Well, thanks for the pep talk," right? But that's partly why I love this church. We're open. We're inclusive. We're a community. How many was standing up? Don had all of us stand up, right? I think this is one of the best churches I've ever been to. And the reason being, we do not judge. We do not judge, and we always welcome everybody. Growing up, my aunt took me to church, and I can remember standing up here singing, and I cannot sing. That's not something I'm really good at. Can't carry a tune. But how many of you remember, it's probably like a camp song. It's called It's a Bubbling. And it goes, "It's a bubbling, it's a bubbling, it's a bubbling in my soul. I'm singing, I'm shouting since Jesus made me whole." And I can remember, she wasn't my grandmother, but she was my aunt's mom, my aunt by marriage, having me come up and sing that. And as you can imagine, I was probably a very lively, active little girl as well. And so that's one of my first church memories. I've been exposed to all different religions. I worked in international affairs in college, and I'm very interested, and I would always talk with other kids, students, about their life at home. I was an English-speaking partner to help the students with their English. And so I just have a great respect for all religions, but I love that this place is home. In 1 Peter chapter 4, 10 through 11, it says, "Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do with the strength God provides, and so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen." So today I want to share with you as if we're out back on my back porch and I'm in my swing, my favorite spot where I like to sit and calm down and find the peace of the Lord and the foxes that run by and the deer that visit our yard and the hummingbirds that get mad if we don't fill our feeders up. That's where I go to find my peace. That's where I go to be still. And so again, I had to get really uncomfortable before I could decide what I was going to do today, even though I had tons of notes. There are more than just those pages, by the way. I'm going to take you back probably to about 2000. The year 2000, Tristan was a baby. Our oldest son was about 8 months old. Keith was teaching at a private school. I was teaching at Hamilton Township. And he had interviewed at Granville. He just so happened to take my resume, back in the day when you can just take a resume in and drop it off. And I was a special ed teacher, and they kept calling me to teach high school, and I kept saying, no, there's no way I could do that. I was finishing my master's degree, and I had just accepted a position at the school to become the reading teacher. And so that's something that I've been very passionate about. My master's degree was going to be in reading, culture, and literature. And I was driving up High Street to class, and I kept thinking, I'm not teaching high school. And so as the school psychologist, who was our special ed director and school psychologist at the time, called and said, I want you at the high school. We have a special group of kids up there, and I think you would be great. And I said, well, let me talk to my husband. I had interviewed twice at the elementary, did not get hired at the elementary in Granville. And I said, I really am excited about the position I'm going to take. Let me talk to my husband. I'll call you on Monday, because this was probably a Thursday. So after talking with Keith, talking to my parents, praying about it, we decided for our family it would be best if we were in the same school district so we could have the same breaks. We knew we wanted to have another baby. And so I accepted the job at the high school. And it was a great experience. I worked with these students. I did a lot of hands-on. I had 2 students that had Down syndrome. I had a student that had cerebral palsy, and another student who had some brain damage at birth. She had a TBI. And through those 4 years, we did a lot of cooking. We made a recipe book. I taught them how to plan for a party, do the food, and then we had a party, their graduation party. They didn't know they were planning it. We ran a school store, so they were counting money. We took on the principal's vending machine, which is called the slush fund at the high school. And the kids would go into the locker rooms, take inventory, and then have to order what sodas they needed. That was before they took all the soda out of the school. But the kids were learning life skills, work skills, and it was just phenomenal. And then I think it was September 2003, Keith and I had to drive separately because he was a tennis coach. And he had a match that night. I was perfectly fine. My car was getting worked on, so I took my mom's car. So she was home with both boys by then, because Aiden had just been born a year before. And I drove to school. And then all of a sudden, as the morning progressed, I felt like I was getting a respiratory infection. It became more difficult to breathe. My teaching assistant at the time said, hey, why don't you go ahead and just try to get a doctor's appointment at my doctor's office, because my doctor was out of town. I had called and they're like, oh, just go to urgent care. And I'm like, I'm not going to urgent care. And so I ended up driving myself after school to a new doctor. As soon as I went into the room and the nurse took my vitals, she left immediately. The doctor came back in. They did a quick x-ray of my chest. They had an x-ray machine, and they discovered I had 3 pulmonary embolisms in my right lung. And he said to me, this is pretty serious. Do you have someone that can pick you up in less than 10 minutes? And I was like, my parents are 45 minutes away. My husband's, I remember he was in New Albany coaching. So I thought of my assistant teacher, and she came right away, because he said, if she doesn't get here in 10 minutes, I'm calling the squad. So she came and took me. He had called ahead, so I got right back. And I believe at that point in my life, God was just telling me, slow down, Amy. You're doing too much. I remember in the evening, it was probably 8 o'clock before I got into a room, and it was dark already. Keith had finally made it, and he's like, I'm going to go home. I'll bring everything in the morning. And I was like, okay. And I was almost like I couldn't even relax, right? I was nervous. I was like, oh my goodness. They started giving me blood thinners. As the evening wore on, they brought in someone in the room, another person. It was a double room. And I couldn't hear the woman talk or respond. And her minister came in, and he started praying with the family. And I'm over on the other side of the curtain, super close. And he started praying for me, and I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you for letting this man who I don't even know pray with me, pray for me. I don't even know him, and he's praying for me. And then he started giving her her last rites. And if you've never experienced that, I was just so humbled. And then I couldn't sleep. And so the nurse came in and was like, you really need to rest. I said, you know what? I can't. I'm wide awake. I can't rest. She said, well, I have to give you another shot. And I thought it was a blood thinner, but I think she gave me something so I could sleep. And I woke up the next morning and the lady was gone. And I just remember when the doctor came in, I said, I have to leave. I can't stay here. And he's like, oh, we have to run all these tests. And so, by the time Keith got to the hospital, I told him what happened. He goes, I'll get you out of here today. We're leaving today. It's okay. It's going to be okay. And so I got home, and that week I did a lot of praying. I did a lot of soul searching. This church community just wrapped us in prayer. I remember Howard bringing a fresh pie Mildred baked. It was still warm. And I ate that first. And then I had my chili later. And my mom and my grandma came, and of course were helping with the boys. And so this was probably a couple weeks later. I was finally understanding what it meant to slow down. I had to slow down. Jim Cummings and Terry Smith ended up coming to visit at our house, and I thought they were just coming to check on me. And I remember vividly, I was sitting on the floor because the boys were playing, and Terry's like, Amy, how are you doing? You just had a near-death experience. And I thought, well, Terry, I'm fine. I'm doing okay. I did not realize what a miracle it was that they caught that in time and that I was surviving. I was living. And I said, well, I did a lot of praying. And so as the conversation went on, he said, well, the reason Jim and I are here is we've been thinking a lot about you and Keith becoming part of our priesthood. And I was totally blown away. I was like, I'm so undeserving, right? And so I remember Jim talking to me about it and then asking me, it would be as a teacher and Keith as a priest. And we talked and talked some more. And then they left. And I looked at Keith and he looked at me and I said, what are we going to do? Like, this is huge. And so again, we talked and prayed about it. And then we accepted those calls. And, it's been a wonderful life-changing experience to be called into something such as our priesthood in the community of Christ Church. It's life-changing. I'm making sure I'm on the right track. So, even though I felt broken at that time and not deserving, we are all called. We are all called to be a part of something bigger. In Doctrine and Covenants 161 4b, W. Grant McMurray in 2000. Isn't it amazing? It was the same year Keith and I decided to go to Granville to teach. Be reminded once again that the gifts of all are necessary in order that the divine purpose may be accomplished. Let me read it again. Be reminded all gifts are necessary in order that divine purpose may be accomplished. So, sometimes when our life gets busy and crazy, you still need to stop and slow down. You still need to stop, slow down, and make it an everyday part of your life instead of just going through and worrying about the daily things, worrying about little things that don't matter. The other thing I wanted to share, and it's pretty long, so I'm going to cut it. When Keith and I went to Greenville together, I felt a little bit like I had given up something that was my dream and my purpose, by not going ahead and doing the reading position at Central. And so I was happy. I was happy with the boys. We were happy. We built a new house. It wasn't that I wasn't happy. It just felt like something was missing. And so I had applied a couple times to the elementary school's reading position when it became available. And the principal then called and said, well, Amy, we're going to give it to so-and-so. She's been teaching 25 years in first grade. The second time was, Amy, we're giving it to so-and-so. She's been here for 10 years. And I was like, well, thank you for calling and telling me. And then by that time, I decided to get my regular ed certification so that I could go to the elementary school, because I knew if I wasn't teaching there, I would never be able to get the reading position. And so that's what I did. I volunteered as a special ed teacher because they needed someone at the intermediate in the morning and then at the elementary in the afternoon. And so I volunteered to travel, which is not something that most people would want to do. That way, no one else in our special ed group had to do that. I went ahead and took that on for the team, but also I knew it would get me back to the elementary. And so I finished up my regular ed. Tristan would go to kindergarten in the morning that year, and I ended up in the afternoon kindergarten class, so we didn't cross paths because I knew that probably wouldn't have been good. But I was super excited to start teaching the following year as a second grade teacher. And I taught 14 years in second grade, and within those 14 years, I was told no another 5 times for the reading position. Every time it became open, someone who wasn't certified, who didn't have a degree in reading, would get the job. And I know a lot of politics. At the time I didn't, but now I know a lot of politics were happening behind the scenes, and the principal just didn't want me to be in that position. He is no longer in the building, but I also found out that when I applied to go back to the intermediate school, that I was there for in the morning and then in kindergarten in the afternoon. I decided, well, if I'm not going to be a reading teacher, maybe I'll go back to the other building because I love that building and the people that work there. I also didn't get that job, and the principal had something to do with that. So during this time, it was very, it wasn't that I was disappointed I wasn't getting the job, but then I realized, Lord, is this my purpose? Is this my purpose? Am I supposed to just teach and not worry about reading? Again, it was something that I should have been more reflective upon, and I should have stopped myself and been more obedient to God instead of being my own worst enemy and getting in my head and not listening to Him. And not physically thinking, okay, Lord, no, not now. No, not now. It's not something you want me to do right now. I got busy filling everyone else's cup but my own. Again, getting so caught up in work. I think Alicia referred to this a few weeks ago, and it keeps coming back to me. Slow down. Slow down and listen in silence. So I do set up my quiet time in the morning to do my devotional and read my Bible. But I think it needs to be more than just that time. I need to hold myself accountable. And so since the summer of 2020, I've been doing a weekly Bible study with some women. And we meet on Zoom. And these women are all over the country. And it's just been really, really helpful for me to help me slow down. And so again, being told no many times, I didn't know if maybe I was just supposed to teach. And I had lots of students who needed my love and care, and I love teaching. I team taught with one of my best friends, and it was still enjoyable. So I decided maybe that's not what my purpose was. But I continued to make time for him and study his word. And I decided I just needed to change. So I changed to third grade during COVID. And I taught online for 1 year. And then last year I taught third grade as well. And so, after all of that background, this past spring, one of the reading teachers that got the job over me 22 years ago was retiring. And she said, Amy, are you applying for the job? And I said, no. I said, no, I'm not going to apply for this job. It wasn't my purpose. I don't think God wants me there. And she said, Amy, are you kidding? You're getting your Orton Gillingham. She was trained as an Orton Gillingham teacher, and it's very intense training. She said, you're going for OG and you're paying for it yourself. They're not even paying for it. You are so worthy of this position. You would be great. And I said, okay, Ruth Ellen, I'll go talk to Keith, but I really doubt it. And so I went home and I talked with Keith. And I prayed about it. I talked to my Bible study women and we prayed together. They prayed with me. And they said, listen, if it's God's will, yay. And if you get a big fat no again, yay. And I said, wait a minute. I don't want to put myself through that. And one of the facilitators of the group, she runs a special ed school, a charter school in the local area. And she said, Amy, a big fat no is just as good as a big fat yay. You should apply if you want to. And so I went ahead and went to the principal and I said, I would like to apply for the position. I'll put it in writing. This is why I'm qualified. And then I left it in God's hands. Now, you saw how in my head I was trying to prepare yesterday for this sermon. Of course, I was in my head thinking I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving. Every morning through the spring, since I applied for that job, I would drive to school with no radio, and I would just pray. I had prayed in the morning, got ready, and then I would drive and pray all the way to school, and sometimes I'd pray in the parking lot for about 15 minutes. And one morning I thought, I should probably just go and tell him I'm not going to do it. I should probably go and tell him people were talking, political stuff and running their mouths, being petty. And I remember turning on a busy road by my house and just taking a big deep breath, and I heard the words, wait. And I was like, what? Oh my. I had never heard him so clearly in my life. Wait. And so I waited another 2.5 weeks, and the principal came in to talk about my evaluation. And then he said, that job, there's a lot to it. And we had 3 people. You were one of 3 that were applying. And I thought, here it comes, a big fat no. And he said, I would like to offer you the job. And I was like, wait, are you serious? And so he offered me the job, and he said, out of all 3 of the interviews, you were the only one that talked about the kids. That what the kids need this, the kids need this, this is what the kids need. And I said, I always talk about what the kids need. He goes, I know. And so you're looking at the new 2nd and 3rd grade reading intervention specialist. I waited 22 years for that big fat yes. And God, it's all in His timing. It's all in His timing. In preparing, Amanda had sent this, and I didn't read until yesterday. And sorry, I dropped my glasses. If you have been looking at the words behind me, I think words are powerful. And it's really interesting that when I sat down yesterday, I did this first. And then I looked at the symbols. We are a community all over the world. We bring people from all over together. I want you to be still and listen. Be still and know. And in Jeremiah 29:11 it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." Rest in His words. Be still and listen. Be still and know. Our God is with you.